Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Mom and Mind Behind the Sessions. I am Dr. Kat, and I come on here for these Behind the Sessions episodes to talk about the things that come up in therapy. Now, this podcast is primarily perinatal mental health, the whole thing. But there are some themes that come up in other areas as well that are similar, rather, that, you know, cross the divide, so to speak, that aren't just specifically perinatal mental health. And the one that I want to talk about today is how the moms that I meet with, often come into therapy frustrated, wondering why they still feel the way that they feel, and blame themselves for not doing enough to feel better. Uh, this is so upsetting for many, many reasons. One, because we put a huge amount of pressure on women and specifically new moms to, be fine, despite all of the things that are going on, all of the change and all of the transition. But we, I think, have conditioned women. I'm just speaking about women here today. We've conditioned women to believe that they are supposed to self care their way out of ongoing stress and then question themselves as to why they still feel bad. It is bonkers to me. It is wild that it is so ingrained in us, that the world could be falling down around us, and we're still wondering, what are we doing wrong? What are we not doing enough of? It's a huge problem, and it is even more of a problem during the pregnancy, postpartum, fertility, even, um, early parenting journey, because so many factors are at play. um, People are in a transitional space in life, and there's inherently more stress during times of transition. There just is. Things are changing, things are unknown. Even if it's for positive stuff, it's still, an increased sort of mental, emotional load on the brain and body. So there's going to be some impact. But what I hear so often is that, okay, I'm taking the medication, I'm doing the meditation, I'm using the stress management techniques, I'm so on and so forth. And why do I still feel bad? Well, let's take a quick beat and talk through all of the things that are going on in your life and really look at what factors continue to contribute to you having high stress before we start just blaming you and telling you, yep, you're the problem. Uh, just for sure, I want to be clear that I am never telling a mom or a woman that they are the problem. But I'm being sarcastic, obviously, because I want to make a point. And the point that I want to make is one that I talk a lot about in therapy with my clients is, let's take a read on the context of your life, on the stress that you have going on. Unfortunately, like, we as humans can get used to a lot of things, even things that are not good for us. Meaning that, we could be in the day to day of our lives and kind of forget the amount of stuff we're dealing with, even though we feel the stress of it. It's like, sometimes we lose the conscious awareness of just how much is going on. Okay, so what I mean by taking context of the stress in your life, the things that are going on in your life, even if they don't seem or appear to be stressful to you, can be in multiple realms, let's say. And if you're going to take inventory as I'm talking along, or you want to do this for yourself in another way, think of, over the past, I don't know, let's say take a snapshot of 3 months, even though it could be longer. Let's say over the past 3 months, how many times have you had to deal with a change, whether it was something expected or unexpected, um, where, you know, life was going along in one direction, and either there was a micro shift, something that changed a little bit, or a big shift, something that changed a lot, like, loss of a job or an injury or an illness. Or if you've had interpersonal difficulties, whether that's with a spouse or a family member or a coworker or a friend, where there's been tension in the relationship, outright disagreements, things that could be as intense as threats of divorce, or for some people who are in abusive relationships or who have abusive interpersonal relationships in their life. Those stressors, although they may or may not be ongoing, um, absolutely add to the stress load. And there are ways in which, when we try and cope with really, really difficult and painful situations, um, we might cope by minimizing the impact on us. Like, okay, well, that happened, but whatever, it wasn't a big deal, or I'm fine, or it's going to be okay, or they're going to get better, or they're promising something is going to change, so on and so forth. Those interpersonal difficulties, from even the kind of relatively mundane, meaning like the day-to-day arguments, even when those start building up, to things as intense and as stressful as an abusive relationship, whether it be verbal, emotional, mental, physical, financial, um, manipulations, those types of things. Those stressors add up, and sometimes in ways that are seen or unseen, or felt or like registered, and not fully registered. So there's a lot that can happen in interpersonal relationships that can really, really, really impact our mental health, our well-being. Another area is like loss or grief. If and loss and grief, I'm not just talking about like somebody you care about has passed away, but other things, other sort of freedoms lost, or hopes lost, or um, you are feeling really sad or down because of, it could be of one of the changes or transitions I talked about earlier. It could be from one of the relationship challenges that I talked about earlier. And there are also many, many ways to experience grief and loss. And then if you take it to another level of your own being, what kind of stressors have you had yourself internally? Where I'm talking about like, are you dealing with physical illnesses, medical illnesses? Have you had a flare up of something? Have you experienced really intense PMS? Have you felt very exhausted? Have you been having difficulty with sleep? Um, Especially if you're having ongoing difficulty with sleep. All of these things impact us. And while it can be hard sometimes, if you're taking full context of, listing out all of the things that you have conscious awareness of that are impacting you, that can be its own stress and overwhelm. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I had this much going on. However, what it can also do is give you the context and the reason, quote unquote, why you feel the way that you feel. So that if your default is to blame yourself that you're not doing as well as you should be, then at least you can see the why and stop being the other stressor, which is you being hard on yourself. That is stressful. Like, if you don't have somebody on the outside of you saying mean things to you all the time, um, or whether you do or you don't, but inside you internally are saying mean things to yourself, that is stressful. That impacts you. Absolutely, it does. So these are the types of things that people bring into therapy and sometimes don't even realize that they're doing it to themselves. Some part of the work that I do with people is to um, bring this kind of self-talk, context awareness into conscious awareness. So being able to, for instance, my most favorite go-to is when you're feeling however it is that you feel, you go down a list of sorts. Have you lost sleep? Have you like how's your sleep been? Has it been bad? If so, it's probably impacting you negatively. You absolutely need more sleep. Two, have you been eating regularly? And having enough fluids, like really fundamental stuff that we need for our bodies to function. Are you having any shifts in hormones like PMS or any changes with nursing if you're stopping, or if you have a PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, or any other sensitivities that you have to hormonal changes? And then all of the other things we've talked about, like what is the context of your stress? So when we can kind of take inventory, bring in a little bit more context to understand how and why we feel the way that we feel, then you can begin to have that come more naturally over time. It takes a lot of practice. But as soon as you start feeling that, like, oh, something doesn't feel right, or I'm starting to slip into some depression or anxiety, you can take an inventory of, like, okay, what's going on for me? So that if there are things that I can remedy those. If the stressors you have are ongoing, or there's not like a clear end in sight, then you're talking about trying to find a sustainable way through the stressor. You cannot make yourself feel 100% okay when there's an ongoing stressor. You can manage to the best of your ability. You can find ways to cope. And for sure, please don't go into self-blame cycle that you somehow are supposed to have figured it all out and feel better despite all that you have going on. I want to make sure people aren't hearing me say something like, you're not going to feel better. That is not what I'm saying. When we're trying to figure out how to cope and manage through stressful and ongoing stressful scenarios, part of managing that is to not put unrealistic expectations on ourselves, because that ends up, as I said before, being an additional stressor. So if you're going through an ongoing stress, you're not sure when you're going to get out of it, then we're looking at pulling together other supports in your life, whether it's internal or external. So again, looking at your life in big context, for not the things that are going wrong, but in this case, what I'm talking about now is things that are potentially resources or support. What friends do you have? What outlets do you have? Is there anything to look forward to? Is there a family member who can come in and support for a little bit? And if your internal resources, like you're, let's say, burnt out, if you don't have it within you to like find the ways to cope and manage the way that you'd like to internally, then really pulling on your community. Who do you have around you? Who can step in temporarily to help relieve some of the stress and overwhelm? So again, I just really like to name what people bring into therapy and put it out there to all of you so that you can know other people are talking about this stuff too. Other people are struggling with similar things, and the more we can normalize that other people have difficult things that they're struggling with as well, the hopefully less bad we can feel about ourselves, that it's just me or I'm not able to cope or whatever that internal voice is in your head. So I hope that's been helpful for you to think about the context, why it's increasing your stress or contributing to your stress. And then as a way to cope, also think about your other contextual factors that are supportive that you can bring in to help bolster you through a difficult time. Please share this episode with anyone who could benefit from really understanding what kinds of things go on in therapy, and how normal it is for us to struggle, but also how possible it is for us to find healing and feel better. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.